Hi, welcome back to CS170. Just kick off this week. I'm going to go through a couple of admin stuff and we'll go from there. So here we are on week 12. This week for the lectures, we're going to be covering the pivot tables and Excel tables. Actually, I'm going to, even though it starts off as pivot and Excel tables, I kind of think Excel tables is a better place to start. So I'm going to start with that first. And I'm just going to go into the resources really quick. You can see here, we have on your schedule sheet, we have a last Excel assignment that's going to open up tomorrow, April 12th. And that's going to be due on April 23rd with the late due date of April 30th. Okay. As always, as people pass in like some questions that maybe I'll see on Piazza or you sent directly to me, I will try to cut some videos to address certain common questions that people are having. But just let me know and I'll see what I can do about that. Okay. So here we are, all the way at the bottom. So you can see here in my section all the different weeks, and we're down here on April 12th. So I put in the resource for this week. We have conditional formatting, we have Excel wildcard, and we have the vegetables spreadsheet. So let me go into, well, let's do conditional formatting first. So it's just a PDF. Pretty clear, I think, and it pretty much reiterates what I covered during the lecture on this topic, but it's just another thing for you to take a look at. If it's helpful to you, that's great. And then, of course, on the resources is the usual stuff from the textbook, right? And then you can see all these video resources here related to pivot tables and tables, right? And then there's a data validation aspect in here also, which I'll actually mention a little bit at the end too. Let me see here, close this, and here's Excel wildcard. Let's open that up. And I'm gonna just zoom in on it a little bit. Okay, so here, on this, I covered the star, which is the wild card for any of the characters. An interesting aspect, which if you want to apply to that, would be the question mark, which is only to do a wild card just for a single character. So that happens from time to time, but I think really for this class, most of the time, the star would be a sufficient wild card. The tilde, which is this, I don't think it's going to be very often you're going to look at this. And when they say the escape character, it's similar to when you're doing the JavaScript and whatnot, where you might be actually searching specifically for a question mark or a star. And so you don't want it to get confused with that wildcard, right? So you might be looking for something that happens to have a question mark or an asterisk in it. And then you would use this tilde. For the purpose of this class, you don't have to worry about it, but this is just a nice to know thing. So like I said, for the most part, what I showed you was the asterisk, and that's the one that you can mostly know for this class, right? The question mark, like I said, if you're searching for a specific one character, you can do that also. I shouldn't say search for a specific character, make it so that you have a wildcard for one specific character, right? So it could be like B question mark Y, right? And then that one question mark there in the middle. So you can have any character in there. So that's what that question mark would mean. And so these are the functions here. You don't have to worry about the match and the search really, right? So most of the time you're going to probably work with these three at the top, right? So you're looking for the average based on the criteria, you're looking for the count based on the criteria, or you're looking for the sum based on the criteria. For the purpose of this class, of course, you're only using the VLOOKUP. And I think for the VLOOKUP, the things that we're doing with it, generally, you're not going to be doing a wildcard. right? So I think the use cases we do for our VLOOKUPs, you're basically going to be looking at things sort of like calculating commissions or discounts or whatever, and you kind of working with the approximate match to come up with your response. So you probably won't be using a wildcard much here. So it's really these top three functions, right? So you can play around with this, right? You can do something like this little table here, and then you can punch in, some sort of wildcard criteria to look these things up. Okay. So if there's any questions on the wildcard, let me know. And this is the vegetable spreadsheet, which I'll come to that in a future lecture for this week. I'll be using that for the pivot table. Okay. So let's see, let's keep on going here. So let me close this up here. And as you can see, this sheet will cover both the pivot and Excel tables, but I'm going to choose to start with the Excel tables right now. Okay. And one thing, there was a couple people that actually asked me about this, and let me kind of fix this a little bit. So you see certain situations like this, or in some cases, you guys were doing some calculations, and then the calculations came out to be a number. Yeah, well, let me do a big number here for the sake of argument. So big number equals this times, what's a big number here? Okay, well, okay. You get something like that, which is actually not what I wanted to see. I wanted to see something like a star or something like that. But anyway, so people maybe were not aware that you can resize the columns either by doing this, right? You can see what I did between columns B and C, where I just kind of dragged it over, or a very common thing you would do is just go like when it pops up with this line in between like this separator, double click, and it automatically becomes wide enough to accommodate whatever has to be displayed in that column. So like that. Okay, and I do that, and then I do this, right? So it makes it a little bit bigger. So some of you might have seen these stars or whatever pop up when you were doing your assignment. You can do that, right? Now, the other thing is, and I think I did cover this before, is these decimals here, right? So you have the number here, obviously, right? So if I want to make this like currency for whatever reason, okay, you got that. And naturally, it kind of comes up with the 2 decimal places afterwards. Let me do a decimal here for, okay. And so if I'm here, I can control how many decimals I want by going in or out like that. Okay, left and right, that kind of tells you how many decimals to go to, something like that. Don't actually want that, so let me clear this out. And then it goes that, and then, oops, did I hit the wrong cell there? Clear that out, clear this out, and there you go. Okay, and then I'm gonna delete this just like that. So just a little bit of like maneuvering and whatnot for some people that may not be aware about these things to resize columns. And you can do the same thing on the rows too, right? So I can do this, right? And I can make it go up and down. Like so, it doesn't really change the calculations or anything. The calculations are the calculations. This is more of a visual type of thing. Do this. I mean, sometimes people put in like a whole bunch of text here, so you need to kind of make space for it. So that's why you'll do these resize of your columns and whatnot. There's different not conditional, different formatting type of stuff you can do, which you can, kind of see when you do your right mouse button here, right? Or you can do it at the top here, right? So you can see like, here's your font size. You can do your bold, italics, underline, like that. You can even do double underline. You can do the backfill here with the yellow color in this case, but I can make it whatever color. And then you can make the text whatever one of these colors you want. So it's all kinds of stuff. You can do the boxes here, right? So all the borders here, right? So just for the sake of it, let me just do that. So you see what happened here? You see around oak, you see the thick border all the way around, right? And then, yeah, I mean, really, you can just play. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with these borders, right? You can click on all of them and you can make them all bordered like this. So I guess I just mentioned that there because it seems like some people were maybe not aware of that. So just kind of clarify that for people there. Okay, gonna go here, gonna clear out the border like that. Okay. All right, so hopefully that's clear for people in terms of column resizing, row resizing, right? You can see all of this type of stuff. You can do left justification, you can do center, same thing for up and down. So let's say I'm like this, and I'm here. I want to put this to the center, put it to the top, whatnot, right? So you got all kinds of things you can do. Like I said, it doesn't affect the formatting. It just pretty much is more not, I shouldn't say it doesn't affect the calculations, but in terms of like making it look pretty or whatever, you can do these type of things. Okay. And with the numbers, you got that. Obviously, you got all of this stuff you can play around with. Okay. So hopefully for the people that didn't already know this kind of clarifies that capability. All right. So let's look at Excel tables. Okay. So there's a couple of different things you can look at it. I look at it. So let's say I did this. I find that I do a lot of things I can probably get by with just doing a filter, right? So if I do a filter, then it goes like this, and I can select on any one of these and filter based on that. I think I showed this in one of the lectures too. And you can do sorting, right? You can click on one of these if you want to sort it and whatnot. So I kind of find that this does a lot of things, but if you want to do a little bit more, you can do a table too, right? And I'll step into that in a second here. Okay. So, so this is kind of one of those things that, people may do from time to time if they don't necessarily want to go into some of the stuff that you can do on a pivot table, which is why I kind of put this first before the pivot tables. Okay. So you can see here, right, under table tools, you can do like the header, you can do these banded rows here, and then you have the filter button, right? So that's kind of like the standard thing here. So let's go to here and we'll do insert, and then we'll do a table. And then you can see I selected just one of these cells within the table, and it's kind of like this block. It automatically Excel automatically kind of figures out that this is the table that you want. You don't really want to select the whole range or the table and then say insert table. Okay, I know it's a little bit like a quirk there, but just keep that in mind. Just select one cell and then do the insert for the table. And then you can see this little checkbox. My table has headers, right? And there you go. And so you can see automatically it does this whole thing to alternate the colors, which is fair enough. You get to, see these easier, right? If all of this was like the same color, like you kind of go cross-eyed looking at all of this, right? And I only create like a very simple table here. If you did this for like, you can imagine thousands and thousands, right? You don't want to be like monkey around looking at all these different rows with the same color and everything. So having like these alternating colors is pretty useful, right? But you can still also see, similar to what I did with the data, right? You can have all of these different things you can filter by, you use the checkbox, right? You see something like that, right? And just for kicks, let's just, let me do that. I'll take out the 34 out of this. And you can see, boom, it disappeared, right? It's still technically there, right? It just kind of closed it up. And you can see 1, 2, 4, right? But I'm going to put this back in, and there you go. It's right back there. And you can do the sorting and whatnot, right? And there's some other stuff that come with this table, which we'll be stepping into in a second. Okay, so here on the PowerPoint, or PDF as we refer to it, when I upload this to the resources in a second, you'll see same thing, right? This point here, like which I just said, select only one cell, right? And then you insert the table, and then there you have a table. Okay. Go to the next point here. And so you can see the different aspects that I just talked about, right? You have the header row, which is this top row here, which you can do your filtering on. Then you have the banded rows, like I said, that kind of alternates the coloring on each of these rows. So it's easier for you to find them things. So where am I here? So I'm on a table design here. So you can see here's the header row, here's the banded rows, and then you have the filter. Okay. While I'm here, I know it's a little bit later in the PowerPoint, but I'm going to just click on this. So you see what happened here. You have the total here, and then you have that. And so you have this thing like a subtotal. And so what does that mean? I'll come to that in a second here. But you can see I got that just by clicking on the total row here. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Okay. Kind of made it bold like that. And in this case, I just wanted some, but you can see you can do your other functions off of this too. Okay. So let me keep it like that for now, and I'm going to come back to this in a second. Okay, so anyway, you can get to this from Table Tools Design, right? And you can select the table styles. I happen to like this blue color, but you can do that, right? If you like that, it's up to you. Just like so. Okay. And the notable thing on this one is to undo the table, right? So if I want to convert to range, right? So this is the part we were just playing around with here. I actually don't want to undo this because I want to do some other stuff off of this, but this is what you do. You would convert to range here. Okay. But like I said, I want to do other stuff with this, so I'm not gonna undo what I just did here. Okay. So you can do different things like this, right? You know, doing formulas and whatnot. And then we have the total row here. You have data validation. So let me stick with the total row here, and I'll come with the data validation. Maybe I'll do the data validation as another video. So let me just focus on this part. So the total row here, which to me is the differentiator. Like this is the thing that I would like to deal with on the tables. Otherwise, I would just use the data filter, which I mentioned before, which is just this, right? But once you get into the total row and having the idea of the subtotals, I think that's one of the useful things with this. So what does it mean when I say subtotal? Okay, so in this case, I like the sum. So let's take an extreme example here. So I'm going to take all of this out, and I'm just going to have the 8 here. Okay, so you see what happened here. Even though I took all this stuff out, right, and then you can see 8 and 8, then my subtotal became 16. Okay, so that's a particular behavior, which I think is actually pretty important when you look at these totals. So when you do these calculations, the fact that you can keep the whole table, you can hide or filter out all of these results. In this case, I only wanted where the places where there was like 8 cancels. And then it became 16, which is right, or at least right for what I want to do. Let me just put this back a second. for the sake of argument, I'm going to create a new one here. And let me make this bigger so people can see it. Zoom and 5, okay. And yeah, 20, 30, 40, and equals sum. Okay, so you got a sum here, right? And let me do the filter on here, data filter, and then I'm going to take out CN. Now you see what happened here. I did the filter. So if I look at this visually and I say I'm going to sum this, I should only see 50, but in fact I see 90. So why is that? Well, because this sum is not a subtotal, right? This is a sum, and it's going to take everything, which includes the row that I filtered out. In this case, I filtered out the CN row here. So you see what happened here? It doesn't matter, right? I take this out, this sum is still going to count across the whole data set, which is not what I want, right? If I take out any one of these, it doesn't matter. Let's say I take out New Jersey, it's still 90, right? And then let me contrast this to what I just did here. Right, still the same thing, sum, but this is a subtotal, right? You can see up here, subtotal, right? And then this is the 109, this is the function number, and then the count of this, okay? Interesting thing, just to highlight from the last week's video, notice what this is, right? This is a named range, count of cancel. You get that as part of doing this table, right? So instead of saying with a G2 to G19, you get count of cancel, which is what I kind of showed you last week in terms of the named ranges. So you can refer to the whole range as this, count of cancel. That's why you see subtotal 109 count of cancel. Okay, so again, that's another convenience type of thing. It's a thing to help you understand what's going on better, as opposed to me saying just a range G2 to G19, you see count of cancel. Okay, so these are the important points that you should take away from the table. Okay, so if there's any questions on this, just let me know. And for your own sakes, you can kind of play around with these different things, right? Like in this case, this is sum, but you can do count or whatever. You can play around with these however you want to do it. The main thing to understand is that this will factor in whatever you do filtering on. So if you filter on this, your calculations will adjust to show based on what you can see, right? What has not been filtered out versus your standard functions. Sum, let's say, as the one thing I picked, but you can do average or count or whatever. It will factor in what you cannot see. So if you filter stuff out, it doesn't matter. It's still going to show for the whole data set. So that's a very important concept to understand and remember when you're working with Excel. Okay. All right. So I'm going to come back with the data quality type of checking, and I'm going to come back with pivot tables in another lecture.